Hello, welcome to CH Booth Library's Book Chat. I'm Anne. I'm here with Amy and Margaret, and this is the 10th recording we're doing of Book Chat. So I usually talk a lot about fiction, but I'm also a fan of nonfiction. In particular, I like memoirs and books about nature. So I read two books recently that combine those sort of a memoir and nature writing. And I really enjoyed them both. They're both by British authors. And the first one is called How to Catch a Mole, Wisdom from a Life Lived in Nature by Mark Hamer. It's a beautifully written and illustrated little book about the author's relationship with the natural world. He did not do the illustrations, but they're very nice little woodcuts or lino. So he came to love nature partly from using plants for food and shelter while he was homeless for a time as a young man. And he talks about how he came to the profession of mole catcher, which is a real thing that they use in Great Britain. And also by the end of the book, why he chooses to give up that profession. So there's a lot of lovely descriptions of the countryside and the interconnectedness of all that lives in that landscape. And Hamer has a new book coming out in May, which is called Seed to Dust, which is more memoir blended with the story of the garden that he maintains for a wealthy employer, which he does reference in How to Catch a Mole. And this is in Wales, this garden. And so his new book is all about that. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. And I would recommend How to Catch a Mole for fans of introspective nature writing, similar to H is for Hawk, or people who like stories that are set in England. And my second one is similar. It's called A Honeybee Heart Has 5 Openings, A Year of Keeping Bees by Helen Jukes. Another book that blends the personal with the study of nature. This time it's beekeeping, and it's set in and around Oxford, England. So in this book, the author takes us on a year's journey from when she first begins to think about getting a beehive and through each month and what she learns along the way, both about herself and about bees. It's a very emotional book with the author exploring her own vulnerabilities as well as the precarious situation of both wild and domestic bees. And so the journey is very gratifying. She meets new people, regains some purpose in her life through caring both for herself and the bees. So it's a really nice book. It's not a how-to, but you can learn a lot about beekeeping and the lives of bees through reading this book. So those are two really good nature memoirs. And so next we'll have Amy.
Hi. The first book I read was The 7 Days of Us by Francesca Hornack. This is a book that's been on my to be read pile for a couple years, and I kept meaning to read it. And then for some obvious reasons, I didn't read it fairly recently because it's about a family under quarantine. But I thought now that the end's a little bit in sight, maybe I could revisit it. So I read it. I really enjoyed the book. It's about an upper middle class English family. Nothing is wrong with them, but just everyone has grown apart. No one's particularly close. There's some unhappiness. But as it starts right before Christmas, and Emma, the mother, is thrilled because for once, her entire family is going to be under the roof for Christmas because her elder daughter, Olivia, is a medical doctor. And she doesn't have a traditional medical doctor job. She basically signs up for short-term stints with various charity and like Medicine Without, what's it called, Doctors Without Borders, things like that. Goes off to a world hotspot for 6 months, 9 months, 3 months, and then moves on to another one. And the reason why she's going to be home now is because the charity she was signed up with gave you a 3-month tour duty. It has ended, and now she has to be under quarantine for at least a week before she can really move about England. And of course, she could just stay in a hotel, but her mother is horrified because this actually happens over Christmas. So she says, no, you have to spend Christmas with the family. So already part of us who living through COVID are like, maybe she should stay at home. But anyways, because it's an Ebola-like disease that she was treating, so it's pretty serious. Anyways, so she's back trying to deal with her family. Her younger daughter, her younger sister is used to being the attention of the family, and she just got engaged, so she's also a little bit upset that now Olivia, the hero, has come back. And then meanwhile, the father is a food critic, but years ago he used to be a Mideast correspondent, and he still really misses the importance of that job. And he just found out that he possibly fathered a child in Lebanon 30 years ago. And guess what? That child has just sent him an email and wants to show up at, you would know it, Christmas. So it's a lot going on. It plays with coincidences. So if you're one of those people who doesn't like things like that, it will drive you crazy. But I enjoy the coincidences where, you know, one couple is in the airport walking by another couple that they then meet 100 pages later. I like that sort of thing. It's all fun, you know. But it was a really nice, I thought it was a really fun book. I read it very quickly in like a day. A fun book about family that has grown apart and now they're coming together. And it just has a lot of that, the British sense of humor as well. So again, it was 7 Days of Us by Francesca Hornak. And then the other book I just want to talk about briefly is, God, you really can't see the cover, The 99% Invisible City. Ironically, it's a book about design. It just doesn't show up well on a Zoom screen. And it's by Roman Mars. 99% Invisible is one of the most popular podcasts out there. I totally recommend it if you are at all interested in interesting stories about history, because it says it's about design, but it's always about history, sociology, stuff like that, because you can't talk about design without talking about people and why things are the way they are. And it's really makes you think all sorts of things you never thought to think about, and also things like, I always wonder why such and such, and Roman Mars will answer the question. And so they just basically took a lot of what he puts in his podcast and put it in book form or expanded upon it. And the sense of the name is good design is meant to be invisible, so you don't even notice it. But of course, when an architect is trying to be showy, that's a different thing. But like, you know, you shouldn't really notice why things are the way they are, but he explores why they are the way they are. So I really recommend that if you like just an interesting book to flip through that talks about all sorts of little interesting things. Like he talks about historical markers and the whole, you know, why they are where they are, why a lot of times they're actually not innocent. You know, they're often put up by various groups that have a point to make. And a lot of them will put, like, for example, a lot of the pro-Confederate ones were not, as you might think, put up right after the end of the Civil War, but they were put up during the Civil Rights Movement. And he talks about how, and of course, we've been talking a lot in the news lately about some of those statues and plaques being removed and how fraught that is. So it's a really interesting book, I think, and I really recommend the podcast. And we can go on to Margaret.
Thanks. That sounded terrific. Amy, you do such a good job of piquing my interest on new stuff. Yep, so hi, I'm Margaret. I work at the CERT desk. I think this is my third, maybe fourth time doing this book chat. So I wanted to start just by saying that with the stresses of the recent year, I have started and stopped a lot of books just because of my own lack of focus or interest. I found I really needed something suspenseful that I connected to very quickly to keep me wanting to read more. And for me, psychological thrillers always fill that ticket. And in that genre, I think that J.P. Delaney is a very good author of them. So the book I want to talk about is Playing Nice. This is still considered a new book, I guess. It came out in September last year. I just read it a couple of months ago. J.P. Delaney, just a little fun fact, that is a pseudonym. And I read that most authors write under 2 initials sometimes for a first name so that people don't know if it's a male or female because they think there's some sort of bias attached to that if you only read male or female authors. Anyway, this book opens up, first chapter reveals a young father named Pete, leaving daycare after dropping off of his son and returning home and encountering a stranger named Miles at his doorstep who has a lawyer with him and drops the devastating news that after a full investigation, they are sure that their sons have been switched at birth by an understaffed hospital. And this is how this book starts out. One thing I liked about this book is, although it deals with children, it equally really fleshes out the characters of the fathers as well as the mothers. I think you may expect the relationship between the children and the mothers to be more prominent, but it is not. The fathers are almost more prominent characters than the mothers. So it goes on, the two families, Peter and his partner, Maddie, and Miles and his wife, Lucy, agree that they will do, they will try to blend their families, and instead of swapping the boys back, they will try to find a way to be a new flexible blended family where everyone shares custody. And this starts off all right, but as you can tell, that may be fraught with difficulty. And together they plan to sue the hospital for the tragic error that has happened. But soon that investigation unearths disturbing questions about what really went on that day and whether or not the hospital staff can really be blamed. So the book really keeps you guessing and questioning who you feel the guilty party is. And even when you truly do know who the bad guy is, you really switch sides a lot in, I think, who you empathize with. And it keeps you wondering. It's filled with many ethical and social issues involving the mothers and the women in the story, mental health, children with special needs, the state of healthcare. So I would say if you love psychological thrillers already, I would definitely recommend this one. If the genre is new to you, a great first pick. J.P. Delaney has other titles that I've read, including The Girl Before, Believe Me, and The Perfect Wife. And that was my only book for today.
Thank you, Margaret. And so I agree with you about the picking up and putting down a lot of books. It has been really hard. And one of the things I've been drawn to are books that are small. So that my next book is a small book on the outside, but the inside is something else entirely. So it is called At Night, All Blood is Black by David Diop, and it's kind of hard to describe. I'm going to read the short summary from our database novelist. And the summary says, haunted for refusing to kill an injured comrade who begged to be spared an agonizing death, a World War I soldier from Senegal begins killing enemy soldiers as penance, earning a sinister reputation. So it's translated from French. The author is from Senegal. This story is brief but intense and also poetic, with battlefield scenes as well as descriptions of the childhood friendship between the narrator, Alpha, and his injured friend, Mademba, and how they came to sign on with the French to fight in World War I. So this is a different perspective for me, since as an American, when we think about colonial powers, we tend to think about the ones controlled by the British. So I thought that was an interesting angle of the story. The story itself is pretty grim, especially as Alpha begins to lose his grip on reality due to the unrelenting guilt he feels. But it's not just from the war, it's the colonialism the characters grew up under, plus their own culture's expectations of masculinity, all whirled together. And it's hard to say that I enjoyed a book like this because of the subject matter is so intense, but I really do like books that get me thinking, and this definitely did. Sort of the theme of, are the atrocities committed, during a war any worse than ones that are committed individually? And So it's very intense and thought-provoking. I would say read this if you like books that explore the why of things, like why characters do what they do, how past events affect the future. It's really a really good story, but it is a little intense, so be warned. So this is At Night All Blood is Black. So I think that's it for this 10th episode of Book Chat. Again, all these titles are going to be on a document that you can find on our website. You can click on the titles and be brought right to the catalog if you want to borrow them. And I hope you find something great to read. And thanks, Margaret and Amy. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.